Almost in agreement, bitches. Sam's in the room with me. He doesn't even have his ears on yet. He's too busy making good conversation before I'm ready to record. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to start recording and you can talk it all you want. So we're almost in agreement. Almost in agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Our Facebook channel is up and our website is up and running. It is almostinagreement.com. Check that out there. All our episodes, links to our sponsors. Sponsors? Who said sponsors? I did. Fanatic Brewing.
Who that?
At fanaticbrewing.com/agreement has decided that we're worth giving money to talk about them, and it's fair to talk about them. They have great beers. Marty Vallis has been in Knoxville for many, many moons and made many, many great beers in this town, and you should check out all his beers. But what you should really do is make a trip down to the fan base. That's their tap room at their at the brewery there. And they have Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. They're open from 5 o'clock till whenever they shut it down. Thursday night is open mic comedy. Friday and Saturday they have $5 Black Green burgers and $5 Black Angus burgers. And they also have a $3 pint special. You should go check that out as well. We really appreciate Marty and Marty and Fanatic Brewing for sponsoring the show. That is fanaticbrewing.com agreement. Check them out today.
Hells yeah.
Thanks, Marty. You're the best. So anyway, I don't know. I
didn't want to go off on that on the show anyway.
We've had a bunch of pre-show conversation, so we're bringing it back. I don't know. School board was crazy this week. Should have been some people arrested today. That's fucked up. I'm really confused on what I guess the question at play here is, what is the line from being energetically and actively engaged in public discourse at a public meeting, county commission, city council, school board, for example, today? What is the line between active engagement, maybe overly excited engagement, and disrupting a meeting? And I'm generally the type, I generally like, it's not race shit, it's not race shit, it's not race shit. But Candace and that group of 6, 7 got arrested and taken out of that county commission meeting a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And I was watching that school board meeting today, and if they weren't disrupting the meeting just as much, I don't know how to, I don't know.
Were they closer proximity than?
No, yeah,
I thought you said they were up in the balcony.
Yeah, the school board one, they were up in the balcony today. And I guess part of it too, if you get down to it, is the school board set today would shout and yell and do some stuff, but then they would die down quickly. And the Candace and that group at the commission meeting seemed to, we're going to not stop until you make us stop. And so there's a little bit of difference in it, but it's like what is the line? What is the actual,
right?
Like functional, this is where we draw the line as the public building authority and or sheriff's office and or police department or whomever is the authority in the situation where this is too much. And I don't know, but as much as I don't like to say it, and I don't know how much I truly believe it, it's hard not to look and say, well, this was a group of black people. They got escorted and arrested. These other ones are groups of white people, and nothing happened. I don't know. Like I said, there's more than just, there are more differences in the cases than just that, as far as watching it tangentially.
Right.
But it's certainly something to consider.
I don't know if they draw a distinction between, the school board versus, our county or city commission.
Perhaps.
I don't want to say one's has more weight than the other, but one has, I guess, more legislative power than the other.
No, that's just it. That's one of the fun, fascinating. Legislative, depending. They have their own legislative authority over their subset.
I guess they have a broader,
but they're for all intents and
range of legislation that they can.
Right.
do.
For all intents and purposes, we have 3 separate governing bodies in the county, not including the city. The city would be a 4th: sheriff's office, school board, mayor's office / county commission. That's 3. There are 3 separate bodies at play. Essentially, as far as I understand it, the sheriff's office answers to the state-ish at best. So the sheriff's office is only obligated to follow state law. If the county commission puts something in place, the sheriff's office is not obligated to answer to that. The school board is not obligated to answer to that. I'm pissed off at the school board right now, a lot. That's aside. I'll go into that in a second. But as far as the way the division of power goes, sheriff's office, school board, local legislative, which would be mayor/commission, are kind of on the same plane. They don't answer. I mean, sheriff's office and the school board both answer financially.
I guess they're like their state boards, I guess.
Right. Their budgets have to come through the commission and the mayor's office. But other than that, there's, like Mayor Jacobs, and this is secondarily weird. Mayor Jacobs all right, so to back it up a second, Lee comes out and says the state's not going to require the mask mandate for the 89 counties that the state controls. The 6 counties that have their own health departments should follow suit. Comes out of Governor Lee's office, and we go, okay.
The wording of it was really vague, and it was we ask or we request that the other 5 counties end by the end of May.
It's just hey, we think you should too. I mean, that's how I took it. And maybe
I think it was a way to make the other side look bad, basically.
Well, I think
they're like, well, we tried to open it back up, and it's all on them now.
Sure, absolutely.
And I think the same thing happened with what the mayor put out. It basically put the Board of Health, the health director, in quite a predicament to where she would look even worse if she tried to push back and be like, no, I've got the power.
And that one's weird to me too, because I'm very unclear about it, because I still don't know if the Board of Health / Martha Buchanan had the authority because it was under an emergency order.
I thought the commission already basically said that. When they were talking about taking it away from the board and giving it back to the health director, they said, yeah, now the power will be in
I agree with that. But
somehow with the executive order,
with
the mayor thought that somehow a part of that gave him complete power over it.
I don't know if it gave him complete power, but it was unclear. It's still unclear to me whether through the pandemic, while we were under a state of emergency, I still haven't gotten a clear answer on whether or not the Board of Health's authority only exists when the Board of Health still existed. Only existed their authority to mandate XYZ. It's still unclear
under an emergency
whether it had to be under emergency protocol or whether it was normal protocol. That's the question I still don't know the answer to. I mean, I guess sort of Mayor Jacobs.
I think it was when it was
sort of answered
under
the question.
Some kind of like health crisis or health.
Like I said,
emergency.
I have not gotten a clear answer on that yet.
I said, reading it, we're still getting the funding.
Right. Which is still also weird.
He's like, so we are, but we're not. Like, we still want the money.
Which I'm good with it. Again, any time we can take out of the, if the money's there, you got to take it as a state. I mean,
but I would.
Which is weird.
I would think those governing bodies above it, and we're like, well, no, you get the funding because you're in a state of emergency.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, but can we still just get some money? I understand, bring out more money if they're actually going to put it to good use.
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to print money and give it away, you got to take it. You got to take it. That's the argument for why people that didn't necessarily need a stimulus check took it. Yeah, but you just give your check back if you get stuff. No, if the federal government's giving money out, you take it. You have to take it. Because at the end of the day, there is a cost involved in this, and it's coming back somewhere. Whether it's a cost in inflation, whether it's a cost in new taxes down the line to try to take back some of that money. Somewhere in this, there is a cost to this money from the sky that the federal government threw out.
Right.
And we'll have to see how that shakes down. And it concerns the shit out of me on a lot of levels. Because, again, I was talking to Bab on Wednesday, Virginia Bab. I'm talking all nice like I know her that well. I'm talking to Lady Bab, Virginia Bab, School Board, District 4, my girl, on Wednesday about it. And we were joking about, we were talking about the budget. And I'm trying to understand this budget. And, one of the things about our school budget and our county budget for that matter, property tax is a fixed number. That's easy to calculate. We can figure out what that's going to be next year. Done. But most of our tax revenue from a local standpoint comes from our local portion of the sales tax. And we only know what that is when it happens. We're estimating it so basically the school board is estimating that $542 million is going to be collected and available to the schools. And so they make a budget of $542 million. We don't know that money is going to exist if next week, the next pandemic comes through, the South African variant ends up being like the super variant that we were all afraid of. Yeah. And we shut completely back down, like to the point where it's like, it's on your Amazon packages. We can't deliver Amazon anymore. And we have zero sales tax revenue. Knox County's got no money. There's no money to spend. I mean, we have a rainy day fund for a little while or whatever, but that's how we do our money. And it's from what I understand, the county gets their money 2 months
I was going to say, how quick is that turnaround of collecting taxes and then doling back out? I mean, I know they only give money, quarterly or yearly or whatever.
I don't know exactly. I think it's just 2 months in the rear. So like, if you have January sales, and then all the businesses that are doing stuff collect sales tax in January, they're due on the 20th of February. So the 20th of the following month is when the businesses that collect sales tax have to pay it to the state.
Well, and the state's always looking at Christmas sales. They're like, "Are we going to have money to spend in February?" Like,
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and then I think is so January sales gets collected to the state in February and it gets redistributed in March. I think. I don't know the second part of that. I know the first two. January sales, businesses have to pay their sales tax to the state by 20th of the following month.
Yeah, I never thought about that. I always kind of assumed it was like a yearly budget. So, once a year, that money was kind of allocated electronically. It's not like they mail out one of those giant Publishers Clearinghouse checks to you.
I don't know. That's a good question. That's just an interesting thing to follow. And so anyway, I was running down the rabbit hole on different stuff with Virginia Bab, and I was thinking about it. It's like, well, standard, economics says with all this new money printed through the COVID relief packages and whatnot,
inflation would
inflation is going to catch up. And so this budget doesn't matter if you think about it, because teacher salaries won't go up, those things won't change, but the cost of function,
the teachers are getting
they are in this right in
4%,
right in this budget they are. But I'm just saying, this budget says we're going to spend, I don't know, a couple $1 million this year on toilet paper and paper towels. Well, inflation kicks in, depending on how that percentage of inflation is going to go into that number specifically. So we could have allocated $750,000 for toilet paper for the year, and we might use the same number of rolls of toilet paper this coming year. But if inflation kicks in, that might be $1.2 million in toilet paper. And so that's one of those hard things that, it doesn't matter. That's everybody. You deal with it when it gets there. You can't do anything about that.
I don't know what interest rate it applies to. I know the Fed, is it Jerome Powell, I believe, is the Fed chair. I think he came out and said that there wasn't going to be any increase in, I guess, the interest rate. He wasn't going to raise the interest rate. He was going to keep it low.
Right. And why?
When you get up to federal politics, I don't know.
It's not federal politics.
Or federal funding, I guess.
The Fed is a private company. Yeah. A private entity.
See, and I always thought Freddie Mae and Fannie Mac. Freddie Mac? Fannie Mae?
No, you got it right the first time. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac.
I think I said it backwards first. Anyway, I didn't realize those are divisions of the Department of Commerce. I always thought those were just like lending companies. But they're actually divisions of the government.
Yeah.
I was like, I just thought those were like, the big lenders. Like,
right. And I've tried, Run Your Mouth podcast. It's not a very well done podcast. I'd say we do a better production. But the dude that runs it, like, he's a comedian. He's a guest on a couple of the podcasts I like to listen to quite often. But he's really into the Fed and trying to explain how the Fed works and stuff like that. So he's had bankers and stuff on. And the way the Fed works is just the premise of what the Fed is crazy in and of itself. It's like somewhere between a utility and a private company. Yeah. It works for the federal government, but not really. It's supposed to try to help fiscal policy, but it has its own ends. But they also have the ability to print U.S. money. And so, especially when you come into the digital age, it gets real fucking crazy. Like, one of the things that I learned about it is that as a bank, the Fed has set up a system where, well, first of all, the Fed lends money, right? They generally don't lend money to you and me. They lend money to banks that they turn around and lend to us, right? So traditionally speaking, what a loan from a bank was me and you and our neighbors said, hey, bank, hold on to this money for me. And while you're holding on to this money, give me a little bit of extra back, because what you're going to do with that money is loan it to our other neighbor who's going to do a renovation on his house, right? And so we get 1% as depositors. They charge 3% to the person borrowing the money. Bank gets a percent or two. We get a percent for letting them hold our money. Well, what the Fed does is take me and you out of that as depositors.
Let the bank, let that person play with the money.
Right. Well, what the Fed does is they tell the banks, well, we'll lend you the money, which they don't necessarily have. It just exists in theory.
At this point, it's all just
And they say, bank, we'll loan you the money, and then you can loan it out. And so, like right now, when the interest rate's super low, 0%, 0.5%, whatever it is, the Fed's doing right now, bank's charging 3% for you to buy a house. Bank's making 2.5%. And the bank only needs to have, what was the number? The bank only needs to borrow 60% or 80%. I can't remember which two of those numbers, somewhere in that range.
Of what they lend out.
Of what they lend out. So they lend out $100,000 for a cheap house. They only need to have $80,000 in reserve. But when that $100,000 plus interest comes back, regardless of the interest side, the bank makes $20,000 because that money didn't exist before. They pay the 80 back to the Fed, and they have $20,000 there plus interest that just appeared out of nowhere. And we wonder why, prices are everything. Why is everything so damn expensive? Because money just appears in the system we have from what the Fed does in relations with banks. It's fucked up.
I'd say that's even that semi-complicated example of it is probably a really simplistic version.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's way more shit going on than that. That's the stuff that I can understand.
Right.
And again, Knox County, you suck at life because I'm the smartest person in understanding how BEP works. And I've got a new take on that. Not a new take, but a better. I don't know how to. I'm still working on how to explain it properly. But what's happening in reality in the BEP formula, the state comes up with a number that they think it takes per kid to get them through a year of school, right? And what the state does is they underpay that number so they can take out of big counties to catch up the little counties, and then the big counties can make the number up anyway. So this year we're about $9,000 a kid in this new budget. I think the state's saying $7,500, but what the state's doing is only sending us like $6,000. 55,000 or 5,500 rather, and then we have to make up the rest locally so that they can get the surrounding counties that don't have the tax base or whatever to make up that difference. So the real number is $9,000 or $10,000 a kid. It's just that the state's only going to fund a portion of it, which again pissed me off too as I was talking to Virginia Bab about it, because the big virtual school issue this year is the state is saying you're only allowed to have one in each school set. We're only allowed to have one virtual elementary, middle, and high school. And state mandate says no school could have more than 1,500 kids, including virtual. So there's 4,500 total kids in Knox County that go to virtual school next year for whatever reason. And that's what one of the things the school board's trying to figure out is how they're going to break that down, because there's going to be more applicants than.
Yeah, I saw they put in the stipulation that if you were on any kind of sports team or cheerleading or any kind of extracurricular activities,
it's unclear.
You couldn't. No,
right.
they've straight up said you can't be virtual and do that.
Well, it's unclear because you can, but it's a new school.
Right.
You're not going to go to Bearden High School.
Right, but that virtual school is not going to try to put together a football team.
Why not? Why wouldn't they?
Why would they?
Because
they've got no incentive. They've got no collective, I guess, reason to be a team.
I mean, the same reason any school has to have a team, or doesn't. I mean, it's the same collective. The argument is why you're in virtual school in the first place. If you're in virtual school because you don't want to be in contact with, you don't want your kid in contact with other people because there's a specific risk or fear that you have with your kid going to a school to have contact with other people, but you want them to play football. That doesn't make fucking sense. But you have 1,500 kids in a high school, and you have enough kids that want to play football, put a football team together. They should have equal access to sporting budgets and stuff like that every other school has. I wouldn't see why not.
Where are you going to practice when you got, I don't know, 40, 50 kids from all around the county?
I don't know. That's a hurdle.
You don't have all those people in one campus or at least one central school district.
But that's part of what I don't understand about it is why don't you have them in the same place? You don't have them in the same place because there is an issue at play that the parents don't want them to be in physical proximity to other people, but they want them to play football or they want them to be in cheerleading. That's what I don't get about it. I understand what you're saying. I do. There's an infrastructure issue. You don't have the equipment. You don't have the field. You don't have you're probably not going to bother hiring coaches because you don't necessarily think you're going to have one. I mean, maybe once the interest is there.
Coach.
But again, I mean, Virginia Bab again in a smart response to that question is most of the clubs and stuff will probably still exist. You can still have a student government. They'll just do a Zoom meeting. Everything else they do, their classrooms is Zoom meeting, or I'm sorry, Knox County Schools is a Microsoft subscriber, so it's Teams. But they'll have Teams meetings, or they'll have Zoom meetings off the books because they can't do Zoom meetings officially through school.
I know the Scholar Bowl, they've actually got a homeschooling team that can compete in the Scholars Bowl.
Good for them.
That comes on.
They probably kick ass too, don't they?
I think they usually do pretty good.
But I don't know. I'm just saying, for certain activities, like I get it, but for certain activities, I don't. Like, why are you putting your kid in virtual school? And they want to play football.
I mean, maybe they're worried about that potential of, another pandemic wave happening, and then school's got to shut down again, and they're put in the middle.
But you're cool
what, we've been doing virtual for a while. Our kids. I mean, there are, I don't know percentage wise, but there are some kids that are thriving in the virtual.
That's true.
I think more often than not, a lot of kids, because it's something they're not used to, aren't doing as well with the virtual learning.
Right.
They're not learning as much.
I'm just saying, if the reason you want your kid in virtual school is because it's better, it's easier for them to excel in it, okay, then I can see how you can pitch a fit about not being able to be on the cheerleading squad too. But if the reason you're putting your kid in is because you're concerned about the health and impact and interaction that is a physical school, then I don't feel particularly bad for you not to be able to have a cheerleading team. Because why the fuck do you want a cheerleading team if you don't want your kid in the same room as other kids for class?
I got feeling when I first saw that, I was like, that's kind of fucked up. It's basically like, well, if you want to play football, because there's some kids that that's their aspiration. They want to go to UT and play for the Vols. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, you want to play football? Well, you're gonna have to come to our school this year.
Well, why do you want to be in virtual school? It goes back to my same question. Why do they want to be in virtual school? Because it's easier for them?
Everybody has different reasons. I have no idea.
That's my issue with it. Like I don't know. I guess to me, if you there are homebound kids. There's always been homebound kids that have had significant reasons, whether it's a health or some other thing, that they have a reason for why they don't physically come to school. But those people that have reasons why they don't come to school in the current system are
people that already aren't playing sports.
I would assume are not on sports teams and cheerleading and stuff like that anyway.
Right.
So I guess my impression of it is it's a mom or dad that has a kid that's baseball team capable functionally, but not a particularly good student in the classroom.
Were the schools losing money when more kids were going virtual, or did it matter? I guess, the kids are still enrolled in that school, so I guess they're still getting per child, per enrollment.
Yeah.
As long as they're
again,
logging onto the website or whatever.
Right. And from what I understand of it is that the state's response to this was something going on in Memphis. There was concern that Memphis was going to be like 75% virtual school if they let them. And so because state has to do a fixed thing across all counties, the State Board of Education was like, we're doing one school at each level.
Oh, so these city slickers get to tell us what to do?
I mean, it's to keep Memphis from doing something, not to adhere to what Memphis wants.
Right.
Which I pitched a fit at Virginia about it. It's like, well, we pay half the fucking tab. We do. Here, locally. We pay half the fucking tab. Why do we give a shit what Nashville says about what we want to do with our schools? If they want to mandate shit down, then they need to pay the fucking tab. All of it.
I mean, they could turn around and say the same thing. They're like, you want to do what you want? Fund yourself.
Okay, then don't take our tax money.
Turn your county into an entire private school county.
Then give it. Then you can't take our tax money. Then you don't get to take the 5% sales tax that you take now. You get to take 2.5%, and then that other 2.5% stays local, and we'll come out ahead.
I mean, I can only assume that would not go well for the city and county without state funding. I don't know how it would work out, because I'm assuming there's some kind of state laws you have to provide, access to free education for children.
Right, but I'm just saying, if the state's like, well, fine, then you do it yourself, then we're like, okay, well, then we're not going to pay that portion of tax that you take. So we'll take another 2.5% out of sales tax, which the county makes about $1 billion a year off of sales tax off of the 2 and some percent that they make already. So let's make it a $2 billion
That's the state
budget.
Sales tax. That's not the city sales tax.
The local portion is state. Is the county and the city have the same local portion. I'm saying right. My point is that so.
Well, the state's going to say you're still getting some of our state sales tax. You can keep your city and county sales taxes.
They don't get any of our city or county sales tax.
Right.
7% of the 9 and whatever is state. Period. Right. So tell the state to go fuck themselves, and we'll keep 4% of that portion plus our 2.5 or 2.25 local, and then we'll only pay 3% to the state, and we have a significantly larger budget, and mathematically we would have a higher school budget from it. The problem with it is that we would have much better.
Why would the state not get their 7%?
Because they're not fucking paying for schools. That would be we can continue down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, let's not go there.
No, the rabbit hole would be, well, we say fuck you. If you're not going to pay for everything, then you don't get to tell us what to do. And they say, fine, we're not going to pay for anything. And then we say, okay, then we're not going to pay that portion of fucking sales tax. And then, nothing happens because it can't fucking work, and the governor or whomever.
I'm assuming it would take a lot of legislation in which changing wording of different bylaws and charters.
Whatever it is, I don't know. It's just the point. But again, it's one of those questions I ask all the time in politics and governance. It's like, what are we trying to do? What about what we are doing fulfills the goal? Because as I told Virginia, and I will tell any other school board person, what if we're trying to get functional young adults out into the real fucking world? What does it matter how Nashville wants to do it? Why does it, I get the idea. I understand the premise of a kid graduating from a high school in Memphis.
I'm assuming it's not how Nashville wants to. I guess you're just saying Nashville as far as that's where the state.
Right. I
say
Nashville is capital Nashville, not Nashville schools.
Yeah.
But, I understand that there's a value in a kid that graduates from high school in Tennessee with a 3.8 GPA means a thing. Whether that kid's a Knoxville kid or a McMinn County kid or whatever. Whatever county in the state, there is some consistency to that idea. A 3.8 coming out of high school in a Tennessee school means he can operate a forklift. I don't fucking know. Whatever parameter you want to put on it. I get that there's value in that. I do. But at the end of the day, now that I'm thinking about it, a 3.8 could be a kid that was really good at certain things and really bad at other things. And then a kid right next to him.
To get a 3.8, you'd have to be doing really pretty good in everything.
Pretty solid in everything. But I'm just saying, all the classes that they got A's in, you could have a kid get all A's in his English and maybe sciences, where you have another kid that gets all his A's in math and, I don't know, something different. And so it doesn't mean the same thing anyway, is my point. You're going to be getting A's in most of your classes, but your B's and C's could be different classes. Well, your B's, you're not going to get any C's.
I was about to say, I was thinking it could be like 1 B plus at the
most. Point being is it's not consistent even in the premise that what it's supposed to be consistent in anyway. Yes, a 3.7 is going to be a generally smart kid. So maybe a 3.0 might be a better conversation. You might have a kid that has a 3.0 that has A's in math and sciences, but can barely fucking read. Because they're really, whatever it is about them or what the school, they might have had that one teacher that really hit off with them and they understood math and science really well, but they weren't really good in English and others and some of the other stuff. Right. And then you have another kid with a 3.0 that, could quote Shakespeare to the end of the day and can, drop 15 syllable words on you and know what they mean and all that kind of shit, but can't add 50 and 75. But it's still a 3.0 in a Tennessee school. At the end of the day, my point being, at the end of the day, it doesn't really mean that much either. Anyway. So what's the value of having a centralized system controlling the schools? Because that's the only value I can see in it, is that it gives some consistency. It makes that 3.0 from the state of Tennessee mean something. What other value is there?
I think that's what it is. The state decided what state standards should be, and that way, you can't have one county that's inflating theirs by, dumbing down their curriculum. Or one city that wants to, raise their curriculum, or raise their curriculum requirements, I guess, or that benchmark,
right,
for what's expected of an education.
I guess.
That way we have everyone pretty much, learning a standardized set curriculum.
But what's the value in that realistically? That makes it easier for colleges to pick which kids they want to let in because those kids will go in and do well and make their college look good?
I mean, in an aspect, it would kind of like lead to that. Because then colleges have to dig in more. It's like, oh, did you come from one of the... Oh, that's why you have a 4.0. You came from that county.
I mean, it's not like it'd be that hard to track.
I'm assuming that's why they have a standardized
So it's to make it easier
core curriculum.
To make it easier for colleges to accept kids. I mean,
to where you have a benchmark in which to evaluate education at to where you figure out, if your teachers are doing well enough. It's like, oh yeah, your teachers are doing great. That's because, you're teaching them dumbed down levels of everything.
Well, I mean, I guess the question would be, I
think school funding goes into, or I think part of core curriculum.
If we could ask a college administrator, like if we could find somebody at UT that does applications, if they see a difference in a Knox County 3.7 and a Roane County 3.7 when they're looking at applications.
I mean, I don't envy admissions. I mean, there's been
numerous admissions
scandals.
They'll
well, that's the thing. They're looking through so many that they've got to have some kind of metric to look at.
Can you
when
pay
they're
for
trying
it?
to evaluate?
Yes, you can.
Well, I mean, a lot of colleges stopped looking at SAT scores. A lot of kids don't take SATs anymore unless you're looking at. I think there's some Ivy League schools that may ask for SAT scores.
I'm just saying, if you're a college administrator, what would you refuse a kid for? You're going to get paid. I mean, you're going to get the money. The school, you're going to get it.
I'm assuming there's very few colleges out there that accept in more than their applications. Or there's always they've always got more applications than students that are coming in.
That's because
students are putting in multiple applications. But at the same time,
right, well, they're
not hurting for students. They have to cut off more than they're begging people to come.
I guess. I mean, yeah, I get what you're saying, but at the end of the day, that doesn't. I mean, so it's a pseudo meritocracy then, that they're kids that have better scores get into better schools faster.
Are more likely to, yeah. I mean, that's what admissions are looking at. I mean, especially if you're going to... Because the school, I'm assuming, is spending some money to essentially, hire teachers and to teach you and set up all these classes or whatever. I mean, you're paying them as well, but it's, in a sense, it's still costing the school to educate you at the same time. I'm assuming school makes sure they're getting their fair share of the pie of that. But at the same time, they don't want to just let in everybody if they know they're going to have to kick that student out and miss out on that tuition because...
Right, I guess that's the goal, is to make sure you get a kid that is capable of graduating so that you keep him for the entirety of the time.
Right, because it looks bad if you are like, oh, you have this high acceptance rate, but when you look at high schools as far as graduation rates, you have the same thing for colleges. How many of your students actually went, freshman through senior year, went all through and graduated, versus how many stopped after 2 years and were just like, what, never mind. That's gonna look bad upon the school. The other schools are gonna.
I suppose, but why don't they just drop standards to graduate more kids?
I mean, I don't want schools to drop their standards.
I'm not saying that. I'm not advocating for that. I'm just asking that if the point of acceptance,
I mean,
is
that
to
may
get
be
kids
something they look at and they're like, hey, because a lot of the upper level classes are taught by TAs and interns, so they may look at is our curriculum too hard for this? As a whole, we've got these people that are doing phenomenal in all their other curriculum, and they've got this one class that it.
Right, because what they want to do is they want to graduate people that go out and make a bunch of money, and then they can hit them up every fucking 6 weeks or whatever for.
Well, that, I mean, and then you get into other places. I mean, you have people that talk like, oh, hey, I went to,
Right. I mean, UT
blah, blah,
was
blah,
known
university.
for. Right. UT's known for a couple of things that they do well. Body Farm is one of those things, like. Whatever forensics, that portion, that subsect of forensics and the Body Farm and that kind of thing. You go through the Dr. Bass program, even though he's not there anymore. You're a step up from any other forensics program in the country because you came here.
Our architecture's well up there, and I think our nuclear
school of business is pretty good.
Nuclear engineering, which thankfully we're right next to Oak Ridge, so we get a lot of help from right there. Nuclear.
Which again, I don't even know if I want to go down this rabbit hole.
Do you know Oak Ridge has the most doctorates per capita than any other city?
Yeah, I was talking to. I had a trainee. I didn't know that specifically, but I know they have a bunch of fucking smart people.
Yeah.
I had a trainee with me last week, and we were up in Oak Ridge running route, and I was like, man, if I was ever to move out of Knoxville, I'm moving up here just because the schools are better. Because you have all these fucking super scientists.
I'm sure there's some that retire and decide to go into teaching. Yeah,
not even that. It's just like, if you're a high level PhD, you're not going to be okay with your kid going to some generic ass public school bullshit.
I guess I didn't think about that. Yeah,
you're going to make sure it's done right. Global warming's a myth. That one. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. You want to go down that rabbit hole? I kind of do.
Why do you want to go down this?
I don't know. We could save that. That'd be more fun with more people here. What's wrong with you, dog? My dog's trying to eat his foot off right now, everybody.
If you want to find some evidence, but I mean, it's on fucking NASA's website. I'm going to trust NASA over all these other dumbasses.
All right. Anyway, then change the subject or we're going down this rabbit hole.
Okay. I don't think you ever finished with the school board. There's something about it, the school board, that was pissing you off. I don't think you ever went back to it. We were talking about the meeting.
Oh, I mean, yeah, like the consistency, what is the line for disrupting a meeting, and how is yelling and screaming, and I kind of get it both ways. But I mean, it was a funny meeting to watch. I watched or listened to most of it. I didn't get to watch the whole thing, but I was listening to it, and it was just like, it was a weird procedural mess with intent, maybe not group intent, but that I think the group as a whole was happy to not have to actually put the "Are we continuing mass or not right now" on record. So they essentially just didn't allow the meeting to happen. They met and they voted to accept the agenda, and that vote was tied because one of the members was missing.
But they're meeting again next week?
They're meeting
to possibly rediscuss it?
Well, I mean, it's a regularly scheduled meeting, so they discuss whatever they discuss, and I'm sure it'll be on the agenda.
Right.
And I think the general consensus that I've heard about it is that we're going to at least finish the standard school year. The real discussion is going to be, are we going to mask over summer, and are we going to mask into August?
I think
next school year.
I think that's been part of the biggest, kind of questions for parents. Because was it 3 or 4 weeks ago? They're like, all right, you have 3 weeks to decide what you're doing next year.
Right, which that virtual school discussion threw completely out the window because the Knox County already had a plan. Well, that's one of the things that was interesting from Virginia Bab is that what is happening, this magnet school, essentially, this magnet virtual school system where they have an elementary, middle, high school virtual school was the plan moving forward. And so they were going to take next school year and do it as a transition year and kind of keep parts and pieces of the way they did it this year, where you still have a home school, which would be your normally district school, and you'll still virtual from there. But some kids will go into this new virtual magnet school program. But then
separate teachers.
Right. But then the 22-23 school year, it would be into what we're going to now. And so when they initially put hey, you got to tell us what you want to do as a parent, it was when they were going through this transition year style that they'd planned on. And
when they were trying to figure out what to plan, and the parents are like,
right,
well, we need to know what to plan for. And they're like, well, we kind of need you to tell us what you're going to do so we know what to plan for.
Right. And then, but they put that thing out, and then the state comes down and says, no, you are doing 3 schools and 3 schools only. And that's when the school board came back around and sent out an email that says, hold on a second. That deadline we gave you is not true because we've changed, the plan has changed. So here's the new deadline. And so the question is it going to be, 6,000 kids, 7,000 kids that are trying to get into virtual school, and there's only 4,500, 4,000 kids from the high school level want to go, and there's only 1,500 that are allowed to be in it.
I guess it was one thing I hadn't really thought about, but I know there was some pushback from teachers that felt they were kind of doing double duty of trying to teach their kids in school, but also be there for their kids that were at home as well.
Yeah. So, it's interesting to watch, I guess. But I mean, again, I don't know.
I think we should be thankful that we're in kind of like the technological time period that we are right now. That, people that were, when it's like 2 or 3 weeks that we actually were under a stay-at-home order. I mean, without the internet, people would have gone fucking crazy.
No, I think people wouldn't. People would have said no. I don't know if that would have been a bad thing.
I think most people did anyway. Everyone's like, "Oh, we've been locked down." I'm like, "No, we fucking haven't."
I didn't. I never stopped. I never stopped.
Most people did.
I wasn't allowed to.
Most people stayed more at home. But.
I mean, like a lot of my extracurricular activities, as far as like after school stuff that we used to do and stuff like that, stopped. But
I mean, interstate traffic was down, which was actually kind of nice when I was still working.
Right. I remember seeing a meme about that. It's like, if I miss anything about early COVID, was the traffic was nice.
That was some kind of blessing.
And I'm curious to see it, and I mean the traffic's definitely back up, but I'm curious to see if I guess we should ask Barbie if she's back in the office.
Who?
Barbie.
Who?
Barbie.
I don't know who's Barbie.
You do, but anyway, she works for the Haslam family, and she was working virtually for a long time. I don't know if she still is or not.
Right.
We should probably follow. I probably ought to follow up and find that out. Because I'm curious. That's one of the things I'm very curious to see is how many places that have.
I think a lot of companies are rethinking it because I think more so that more people have benefited from it than kids being in virtual school. But I think there's a lot of people that were that much more productive at home. They weren't getting pissed off on that commute going in and trying to rush to.
Well, they weren't sitting around the water cooler shooting the shit about nothing, wasting time at the office.
Right. And there's some people that were dicking off, but I think those are the same people that just dick off all day at work anyway. But at the same time, some of those companies, especially larger companies, that just had small like satellite offices and an office complex somewhere, and they're like, hey, how much are we spending on rent to pay to have you go sit in front of a computer in a cubicle in this office?
What you could do at home, right? And I think one of the things that it made that the market had to react to as a way to quantify that productivity, right? And it's like, well, what does it mean to have a productive day at work for John Q employee? And it's like, well, and this to me, and this is a personal one for me too, is that this is one of those things that it's a problem with how some of the law is around employment, is that you have these hourly jobs that exist where you go in and you put 8 hours in. You got to put 8 hours in because that's what you get paid to do, is put 8 hours in. You do the job in 3, you do the job in 4, but you had to put those 8 hours in. And it's like, well, how much more things could we be doing as people if we were paid by productivity as opposed to paid by the hour?
Yeah, there's some industries that do that.
Not many,
right.
And the ones that do have to prove that they're paying more than whatever hourly minimum for the locality is, which is fine, I guess. But I mean, really, like, servers and bartenders, that's one of the ones that's an easy one because their hourly base is $2.13 or whatever the fuck it is. But they have to prove that they make at least minimum wage or whatever, which most of them make way more than that. At least they're any good at it. Not at Waffle House and not at Cracker Barrel, but most servers, bartenders make well over minimum wage. But like,
I was thinking there were some like factory jobs that some pay was based on, your productivity there.
But it's still probably minimum wage plus productivity,
right? Because
they have to. Then they don't have to prove this.
It's a bonus for you to work that much more,
and then they don't have to prove all the bullshit to the government that these people are making at least minimum wage. And that's and again, like I don't know, like I don't know how to properly oversight that, which is I don't like the oversight anyway. But like my job specifically, my day job specifically is one of those that drives me nuts. Is like this is here's your list of things to do today, get it done. But I have to be paid hourly. So I am incentivized to waste time. And that's stupid because I could be doing more podcasts. I could be hanging out with the kids. I could be doing many other things with my time. But because of the job, and it has to be hourly because I'm in the lower bracket of bullshit and whatever, I'm incentivized to waste time. And who does that benefit?
Nobody, except your wallet.
It doesn't benefit my wallet either.
Yeah, I guess you'd still be getting paid the same.
Right. If it was productivity based, where it's
unless you just clocked out once you were done with that short day.
Right, because I'm hourly. But I'm just saying, like, if I was paid on production,
right,
then I would be getting paid the same. But if I had a 5-hour day or an 8-hour day or a 7-hour day or a 3-hour day, I'd be paid the same. But instead, I have this 5-hour day that I'm fucking dicking off for 2.5, 3 hours to make sure that I hit my 8 hours because I need to hit 8 hours a day average to pay the bills, which is not true either. But like that's the job, and it's like, this is stupid. Like, why can't most? I understand there are certain jobs like
I'd say there's a good bit of trades. I was just thinking about auto mechanics get paid off of the build hours, the hours that they're working. Well, they don't get paid just for being there, especially.
Yeah, but
the quick lube places probably just pay by the hour, but a lot of mechanic shops, you're only paid off the work that you're completing. If customers aren't coming in, those mechanics are getting paid.
Right, but they're but the reason you can get paid well as a mechanic is because you can do the job in less than quotable serviced hours.
Right, it benefits you to be a good mechanic and being able to be efficient.
Right, but so you work an 8-hour day, but you get paid 13 hours of work because you do 13 hours of quote labor as far as the job is concerned. And so and that makes sense to me, and I think more jobs should be like that. Like, McDonald's and stuff, maybe not. A sales associate at a retail place, no, you should get paid by the hour because it's not, it makes sense that you're
paid the same when you're super slammed and the same, when you're super slow.
Right. Or maybe, I don't know. At the same time, it's like, what's the incentive for you as an employee to do good work when you get paid the same whether it's busy or slow? You want it to be slow in there. And until you get to the point where you rationalize that when you suck and scare people off, that eventually you're going to lose your job because of it, which I don't know how many people get to that point in that kind of job aspect,
right,
where it's like, it's reasonable to think, well, if I suck at my job, then people don't come back. And then I still get paid the same just to sit here and do nothing. I don't know how many people get to that realization either way.
Right.
I don't know. Anyway, I don't know. That's a side little tangent of bullshittery. I don't like the idea that the federal governments could, especially the federal government, state governments do it too, just come down and make these rules that it's like, well, who's benefiting from these? You put it as a protection, but it's like, it's only a protection because you only give certain parameters that this company could pay for this job. Certain jobs make sense on production. Just production. Do the job, get paid.
Oh, that's the weird thing about trying to put, regulations in is there is such a wide swath of degrees of employment and work.
Right.
But they've got to have some kind of standardized, guardrails in place to prevent abuse on either end.
They've gotta? Has to happen?
To be more functional, yes.
For what to be more functional?
It's work in general.
I don't understand.
I mean, as far as just look at labor laws, I mean, they finally established, a standardized work week for most jobs. If you work over 40, a job has to pay you overtime.
Okay.
And if you work under 30, you don't get full-time benefits. You're getting, you're just straight part-time, where the company is no longer required to offer, full-time benefits of whatever.
Right. And so, personal example would be a person like me who can do my job in 25 hours has to waste at least 10 hours a week so that I can stay full-time so that I can get access to the benefits that my job is required to offer me. But in the bonus of that whole thing is that if I option not to take the benefits that are offered to me, I don't get paid more. Now, if you want something that's like employee rights kind of thing, maybe you should offer benefits, and if they're refused, you should pay the difference. Because if you're gonna grant me insurance as an employee, and that I can pay out of my salary to be part of your insurance program, $35, $75, $100 a week or whatever the fuck it is, maybe if I opt out of it because you have to match that because the government says you have to match that, maybe if I opt out of it, you should pay me a percentage of what I don't cost you as an employee because I don't take your benefits.
No.
No?
I said I don't know.
I'm just saying, okay.
I was just saying there's a wide range of
right,
jobs
because
that
and again, because there are people like me who have
It's not all about you.
It is about me. This is what the whole world is about. It's all about me. There are people like me who exist in a weird spot, and I understand that I'm in a weird spot. I'm not in a standard spot with my relationship with my employer, as well as being a business owner and all that kind of shit. But I am in a spot where I have options. And the option that is probably the right option is detrimental to me financially. And that doesn't make sense. But this is the system that I have to live within. Because I could get insurance through my day job, or we can do small business insurance, which we're working on, blah, 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 blah. And I could do it either way. But it is in my best interest to stay on my day job's insurance, because my employer has to match a portion of that. But since it'd be me as the owner of the business, I'm on the hook for 100% of it.
All right.
Even if we somehow manage to get equitable plans, which we won't because we're a small business.
And your employer is able to get better rates because they're bringing in a large group of people into
right,
that
which
insurance.
is a whole separate conversation that we promised to have at some point about how stupid insurance in the health industry is. We've had that. We've been teasing that for a while too. But I'm just saying, like, it actually, I lose power as an employee because of the system in place. It's in my best interest to suck it up and deal with the job that I hate and do more for this company that I don't want to do more for, because they have the ability to tweak the benefits that are around my job better than I can as an individual in the market as an employer. And who does that benefit? It benefits my employer.
Yeah.
That's the problem here, is that it benefits the employer, not the employee. And that's not irregular in a number of circumstances.
Right. You said it yourself. The main job of the CEO or CFO is to bring money in. It's not really necessarily to help the employees. It's
right. And
it's increased profit.
And these regulations that you say are, what did you say, have to have? I think that's the quote that you said. These regulations that we have to have are supposed to protect the employee from the employer. And I understand that I'm not standard, but my situation is these regulations that are in place are damaging me as an employee and weakening me as an employee from my employer. I have less options as an employee because of the regulations that have been placed on the company that I work for.
In the oddly situation job that you've already admitted to.
I don't know that's
what I was saying. It's hard to put blanket. I mean, even just for our legislators to put a law that's going to apply to a large swath of people, it's hard to have one set that's going to apply to everybody. There's always going to be outliers that get screwed out, but you do for the greatest benefit at the greatest amount.
I don't know. I guess
that's why I was saying that's why it's hard. That's why that's why it pisses off a lot of people, but their ultimate goal is to do the best for their the general constituency. The general constituency,
because we are okay with the idea that 100 individuals are more important than one. That one individual that's part of a group of 100 is more important than another one. That is the way we regulate. You're right. I'm agreeing with you.
Right. And in the grand scheme, yes, that's what most people, you've got the whole, what do they call it?
But that is the moral and just and correct way to move forward in a society.
Right.
Is that one individual that is in a group of 100 is more valuable than this one individual by himself. Or herself, excuse me. That is how we progress as people.
I don't know about progress, but that's how you provide the greatest good to the greatest amount of people.
Well, yes, that's in the definition I gave. Yes,
yeah.
But I don't. It doesn't. That just doesn't track in a liberty, freedom.
Well, flip it on its side, and would you agree with that?
What? That the one individual's rights and ability to function is more important than one individual's in a group of 100? If I'm flipping over my statement,
than those other 99 or that other 100 group.
No, they have equal. It shouldn't matter. One individual shouldn't supersede another. Period. Just because one individual is part of a group and one individual is on their own, they're both one individual. Okay. And they should be treated equally. There should be no exception. There should be nothing that harms one to benefit the other. Right. But we're okay with it because that other is part of a larger group. That is a problem.
I'd say everybody's okay with it.
We accept it. We agree that it's the have to have regulations. We have to have them.
You're taking the words out of context.
Okay, well, put them back in context for me. I'm confused.
I was talking about it, just a broad swath of not necessarily, workplace regulations. I was just saying just rules in general, that you have to have some kind of rules in place to prevent things.
To prevent things.
I know I'm being vague because it's all through parts of different aspects of society, not necessarily just employment or.
Well, the problem to me is when it gets down to specifically employment is we have this weird relationship with being able to maybe being taught, maybe it's an education issue, maybe we bring this all the way back around to the board of education, is we have this weird thing about understanding our own value in a system, understanding what our value is. We have a lot of times we have an inflated value of who we are as employees and stuff like that we are more important than we really are to the whole thing. And since I am important, and since I was taught that I'm special and that my shit doesn't stink because my mom said so, then I should be more than this. I should be making more than this. I should have more available to me because of this, that, and the other.
There's definitely
or the inverse, and the inverse is true too. I'm not worth more.
You have what people are calling quote unquote entitled,
right? But then you also have the inverse of people that just don't have the wherewithal to understand their own value in the more positive sense, and because that's my issue with my boss right now at the day job. It's like I understand my value in my time, and I tell him this is what I want and this is what it's going to take for me to stay working for you. And it freaks him out. Like, legitimately, he straight up told me that
it's something he's not used to.
He doesn't like the fact that I don't need him. That I don't need his job.
No employer wants to be put in that position. They want to feel like, their employee needs them, I guess.
Right, because he's the same person.
Partly makes them feel better.
No, he is the same person because he needs his bosses. He needs his job. He needs this thing. He doesn't like the idea that me, his underling, doesn't need him or his bosses or any of the fucking shit that goes with it. He doesn't like that because he doesn't have the power. It's a power fucking trip bullshit is what it is he wants the power to be able to say, do this because you have to.
Right.
And I can say, I don't really think it's part of my job. And I have the power to say that to him because I don't need him.
Right.
And he likes that. Well, he doesn't like that because I won't say it to him. But at the same time, he admits to me that I am the best employee in the set that he has. And it's like, dude, pay me for what I fucking do. Take advantage of the fact that I do good work and make me happy, and I'll stick around for a while. It's a mentality issue on both sides as the employee, not me in this case, but as employees in general, thinking that they have to be, I need you to pay me. And you do at some level, sure, but they need you to do the fucking work too.
Right.
So don't just sit there and be like, oh, yes, sir, I'll go fucking do whatever.
I mean, with everything, it's a two-way street.
But I'm just saying, this is the problem because people don't understand their own value in a system. And I think that's something that I don't know how to fix per se, but I think that's something that needs to be conversated about. I think people need to talk about understanding your value in the system. If I am in the lowest level of the lowest rung of this company, and I know that.
Yeah, I think something comes down to, set expectations.
Yeah.
Especially, with employment, and other aspects of life. Is that just kind of like lack of expectations?
Well, just not even lack of
or
expectations.
just unknown expectations.
Right, understand what the expectations are.
Right.
And, if it's a low expectation job, do the expectations there in front of you if you want to step up and do it. But don't just do it for free long term.
Right.
Be like, look, I stepped up. I showed you I could do more than this. You don't really seem to give a shit. So I'm going to go back to what was actually expected of me.
Right.
And you can't fucking pitch a fit about it.
That's something that's very common in society. People, that do go above and beyond, don't see it being recognized, and they stop going above and beyond or even go below what they were doing before. They're like, you know what? Screw it.
Yeah.
I'm doing all this extra stuff. It's not being recognized. Nobody gives a shit.
Yeah. But again, it's like, I don't think I just don't think that we are taught how to value a situation well. And, I mean, I'm fucking turning 40 in a couple months. It took me this long to figure it out. Like, I always thought I was worth more, but I never really put it into reference to what. Yeah, I was worth more because I'm smarter than or whatever. That's fine, but I'm doing this job. And if I want to make more, I need to be in a position to make more, which this job might not allow me to do. I may not be functional in this job to make more. It may not be an option for me. But instead of saying, well, maybe I need to look somewhere else, or maybe I need to do something to show more value, I just somehow expect I should make more. And pitch a fit about, well, I'm not making any more. It's their fault. They won't pay me more. They don't know. They don't understand my value. So I don't understand my value either, apparently, because I keep doing it year in and year out for 20 years of my career. And it's
a common conundrum.
It needs to be. I don't know how to. I like. There's got to be a better way to address this to the masses. Speaking of addressing things to the masses, I pitched gun class at Knox County Schools to Virginia.
Yeah, I'm not. I couldn't. I don't think I could get behind that.
The more I think about it, the more it's right. The more it is absolutely right.
I mean, I think my grandfather. I don't know if it was a part of school. Maybe it was. I think they did have some kind of where they had 22 rifles where they did target practice.
I'm telling you, man. The more I think about it, the more I'm right. We do DARE. DARE's back. We did DARE.
I never realized they took DARE away. Yeah,
I didn't know.
I took it in middle school.
DARE's back. We still do physiology ed or whatever. It's sex ed class. They got some nicer name now, but we still do those. Are those to teach us to...
I think they just call it health class, I think, when I was in middle school last time I took it.
I'm just saying, whatever. It's sex ed. Everybody calls it sex ed.
Right.
We do those, and that's not so you go have sex. We don't do DARE classes, so you go do drugs.
It's because they preach abstinence.
Right.
I say preach for a reason.
Okay. Well, we can get into that part of it here in a second. I'm just saying, we are okay with the premise of those. And the premise of those being... We're not advocating for you to do the things that we're talking about. We're advocating for you to understand the risks that are involved in these things.
Right.
Why wouldn't we put guns on that list? If guns are so much of a fucking problem, why wouldn't guns be on the top of that list and the most important one on that list? If guns are so terrible and they're so rampant and there's so much gun issues, why wouldn't we have a class that spends a little bit of time maybe talking about, I don't know, the repercussions of using a gun? Just the basic, moral one of taking life of somebody else because you have a gun. Also, just general basic gun safety. If you have your hands in your pockets and your gun's in your pocket with your hand, you don't hold the trigger with your finger while you're holding it in your pocket. You don't go inside that trigger guard until you're ready to pull the trigger. Maybe this Anthony kid's not dead if that was taught to him. Go out on a limb. I don't know this, obviously. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he had his hand fully on that gun inside the trigger guard when they're yanking on his fucking arms, and that's why he fired. That's my guess.
I mean, I could see it as an extracurricular thing. A gun club almost, maybe.
No, I could see it as just like DARE class, just like sex ed. Maybe your parents can opt you out of taking it if they're so freaked fucking out by it.
I think even DARE, it wasn't something you took every day. It was once a month. It was
just
had
a random
the guy come in.
I'm just saying, I think that the more, I can't remember who I was talking about at first, but the first time, I think it was when I had a writer in here. I kind of soft pitched it or whatever because we were talking about the Austin East situation or whatever, and I was it just kind of hit me, and it was I know this is a no. I know it's a no. I know there's no way this thing would go, but it makes sense. It really does. And the more I think about it, the more I'm yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And the fact that it's laughable, Virginia laughed at me. She's no, it makes total sense, but it's never going to happen. Just like Metro.
It may have more luck in kind of phrasing it around hunter safety. Having a hunter safety course or something.
Why? I mean, yeah, I get what you're saying as far as a sales pitch or whatever, but let's go down to Austin East and preach and teach hunter safety course. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, I mean, you're teaching the same things you were talking about, gun safety. And you're also encouraging people to give a fuck about nature.
I mean, that's
two birds.
That
you
is
get
a
two
double
birds
bonus.
stoned.
That is a double bonus. That's fair. I like your take on that. I don't see why. I don't know. To me, it just makes just flat out blatant as fuck. This is important. You need to know how to do this. I've told a number of people.
Why do you think that people know how to do this?
We need to know how to do this. It needs to be known how to do. Kids need to know how to approach a situation where there's a gun around. Because that's the reality. That's the world we live in. Same thing is about kids need to be taught about what to do when there's drugs around.
Gun ownership's right around 50%.
How many kids? Okay, I've seen the stat, but it's been a while or whatever. Of kids that end up getting hurt with their parents' gun or with a parent's gun, and I say a parent specifically.
Right.
I think it was a while ago, but I think it was 60-70% of them aren't the kids of the parent with the gun. It's the kid that lives there showing his daddy's gun off to his friends, and his friend hurts himself or hurts somebody else with that gun.
Okay.
Because they've never handled a gun before. They don't know what they're doing. It doesn't help that the daddy's kid's handing him a gun that's loaded apparently anyway, but I'm just saying is that, I've joked about it with guests on the show. It's I've done it to both the kids. I will get my pistol out. I will clear it and I will set it on their lap. And the first thing they do is make sure it's clear. Basic, simple gun stuff. I'll bet you we could go and survey a bunch of high school kids that don't know that. And I bet you that same survey, we could get a bunch of high school kids that have been in a situation where there's been a gun around and don't know that. Just like DARE classes.
Not to equate it, well, not even DARE, but not even equate it to sex ed, but why should it be on the school system's responsibility to teach gun safety?
That is because it's a public good. It's not just a good for. It's a good. It's an opportunity for students that wouldn't get to learn it otherwise. Isn't that the point of school? No, that does bring up a valuable point though, because that's one of the things that is a problem. We dump all these things on school. There's so many things that are dumped on the schools that aren't necessarily.
I don't want to talk to my kid about sex. Will you tell them about the birds and the bees?
Right. Then that is
it's an uncomfortable.
That is a problem in of itself. But I think there are some that are an exception from that. I think sex ed is an exception to that. I think DARE's an exception to that because my parents trying to teach me about drugs. Really? What they don't? I mean. What value can they put in that conversation other than don't do it? Well, yeah, Mom, I get that part. But what happens when my buddy Sam comes over and he's like, "This is fun, man. You should do it." And I like Sam. He's cool. And I want to do it because Sam thinks it's cool. And if Sam thinks it's cool, then he'll think I'm cool because I do it. Other than don't do it, what would my parents have taught me?
Well, what do you think DARE does?
Do it?
I said, what do you think DARE does?
DARE
is essentially the same thing with sex ed. It's just teaching abstinence, don't do drugs.
Right, but they also give you at least sex ed.
They don't say, drink in moderation. They say, don't drink.
Right, but they do talk about some of the health effects of using certain drugs and whatever. They talk about health effects of sex. They talk about some of the consequences involved with it.
Yeah.
And so...
would you... then be okay with showing, they show the graphic, gonorrhea and everything.
Would
you want to see graphic, gunshot wounds? This is what happens when you play with guns.
I took electronics.
What happens to somebody with their head blown off?
When I took electronics at Bearden, I took it when I got electronics 1 was pretty basic, but electronics 2, we got to watch a KUB training video that was graphic as fuck.
Really?
Yeah.
Some guy getting shocked.
We didn't get to see him getting shocked. We got to see what was left over.
Ah.
It was not. Yeah. It was bad. It was real bad. And that was electronics class. And it's important things to know if you're going to get into doing this kind of stuff. You're playing on high power lines. This is what happens if you don't pay attention to what you're doing.
I could see it being more optional for your gun safety course you're proposing.
I mean, that would be a way to get it in the door, I suppose. But that's still not going to happen. It's just not. There's too many parents that would go apeshit over that. I mean,
I'm sure the school would also be worried about I'm assuming you're going to have live weapons in the school, which is something they would probably discourage.
I mean, there's at least one in my school every day.
Right. That's on someone that's
Well, I'm assuming that
trained to have it.
I would hope that a class like this, they're not going to just hand the gun over with live rounds in it and let kids play with it.
Right.
I would assume that there would be a trained professional in the room.
Right. Where they couldn't handle a rubber gun and be able to look at slide action.
No, but they could handle a real gun with no ammo in the room at all, and figure out how slide action works. Or you could put dummy rounds in it and let them fucking cycle it through a couple times and see what happens.
True.
I mean, there are other places where the people are trained with weapons on how they work and all that kind of stuff in a safe atmosphere where they don't.
I understand your logic with the prevalence of firearms that are out there. To like, hey, you may run into this. There's a 50-50 chance you're going to run into this at some point.
I'd say it's. I mean, yeah, at least. I mean, I would say it's more than that. And especially when it's the same group of people that are pitching the fit about this open carry thing. It's like, well, now any dumbass can carry a gun around. Then teach your kids how to fucking be around one and not have to be worried about hurting themselves with it. Teach your kids what to do when they're in a room and their buddy's got one.
Yeah.
And when you see your buddy not handling a gun safely, get the fuck out.
I've got questions about the upcoming law that will go into place July 1st.
What questions do you have?
Does Tennessee have red flag laws?
No.
Okay.
If
So let's say somebody is, legally carrying, and then, they get into a fight with their significant other, and they now have a order of protection put against them. What happens then?
I don't. That's
Is
a good
the
question.
city allowed to go, and then how far can they search?
That is a valid question, because if you have a domestic on record, you
can
cannot
say, "Oh yeah, you legally can't carry it," but you would almost have to get caught with it for them to then flag you as someone that's not allowed to be.
Well, I mean, so
it doesn't prevent you from having it. I guess it increases the repercussions if you are caught illegally carrying when you have order protection against you and you're carrying.
Right. Well, you're not right. You can't legally own it. Period. And there's legal ramifications to go with that.
Too far different, from DUIs. Like, it's illegal to drive, but there's only repercussions if you get caught doing it.
Right. Well, I mean, that's most crimes. It only matters if you get caught. But I would think that maybe there should be, if it isn't already in place, there should be something on the line of if you have a domestic or whatever like that, and you get actually picked up and the police come and talk to you about it and that kind of shit, where you now have a order of protection out, that I will believe that. I guess I don't know.
I guess you can still legally own. You just can't.
I mean, I
guess you just can't possess and have it on you.
Right. The open carry, or not the open carry, but the permitless carry or constitutional carry, whichever version you like. The way I understand it is if you can legally buy a gun, then you can carry without a permit. So if you have an order of protection and therefore can't legally buy a gun, you can't carry. Now, if you already
go to a gun show,
if you already own one, it doesn't matter. You can't carry.
Right.
The question is whether you can still own the gun.
I was saying, some people say that's a safeguard. It's like, well, you can't go out and buy the gun. It's like, yeah, you can. There's plenty of avenues to buy a gun without.
Well, I think the better
going
part
through a federally authorized firearm.
Right, and I think the better part
FFLA.
I think the better question in play, though, is, as you say, is that does it become a red flag issue in that, well, I already own a gun, but there's now an order of protection on me.
Right.
Can I keep my gun? I can't carry, from my understanding of the new law.
Like, I know they increased some of the penalties, but it sounded more like a theft of a weapon.
Yeah, it's a felony.
But I think, kind of the whole Spider-Man thing, with more responsibility comes, or with greater power comes greater responsibility.
Right, and that's one of the things that when I brought up the idea to Virginia, she was saying, I don't think a lot of people understand that it's a felony. Or maybe that was Lauren. Anyway, somebody I was talking to about it. I don't think people know that it's a felony to steal a gun. It's like, I would assume, I would have thought it was. But her point was that even if you do it on accident, if you steal a purse and there's a gun in the purse, I guess stealing a purse isn't a felony. But I would have a hard time believing that it's not a felony anyway, because you're stealing identification, you're stealing
I'm assuming
a lot of things.
There's some latitude between,
right.
the
but if there's a gun in that
defense,
purse,
and the judge.
Right. But if there's a gun in that purse, it's a felony, period, and a story. I don't know if stealing an ID or...
They probably have to prove that you knowingly stole a weapon. I don't know.
No, she was saying that was her point, is that whether it's on purpose or not. And again, she was that was her agreeing with me on maybe this is not a terrible idea. It's never going to pass, but it's not a terrible idea because maybe the extra bonus in that is that you get less little petty burglaries because you would be terribly misfortunate if you went to steal something small and ended up with your gun on accident and now you have a felony on your record.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I digress on that one. I think it's a good idea. I think it should be done. I'm going to add that to pot and Metro Knoxville is my.
Google it and see if it's been attempted in any other states.
What?
Texas would probably be my first state to start looking at.
I would go with like a Wyoming, but yeah, maybe a Colorado. Maybe not a Colorado. I think a Wyoming or one of the Dakotas might have pulled it off. I feel like it's a cold country where just feel like it's a cold weather place, not a Texas.
Oh, I thought you were saying cold country.
No, cold.
Cold.
Yeah, out there, you get out of high school and then you're immediately out there hunting elk, that kind of shit. You don't go straight home from school. You go out to the fucking mountains and hunt elk for dinner.
I don't think it's quite as commonplace as you think.
I don't think it's commonplace at all. I'm sure there's some family somewhere that does that kind of shit, but
is it getting close to your bedtime? I don't want to keep you up.
I'm good, man. I'm rolling now. It doesn't matter. Dave Smith got in trouble. We were talking about that a little bit.
Who did?
Dave Smith was on Joe Rogan and got Joe Rogan in trouble for talking about the vaccines. But one of the things that I like that I took from that show that was very interesting, and Dave Smith's expounded upon it in subsequent episodes of his podcast, is this idea that the center, national politics, we're just going to shift into national politics and make sure I'm clear about this as national politics, is that if you think about it rationally, the political center is as extreme, if not more extreme, than your far right, far left. So the thought experiment that he puts out is like, if you had a country that was kind of functional, pretty good, pretty solid at what it was doing or whatever, right? And so you're going to vote or whatever, and you have to pick between like a super woke Green New Deal socialistic kind of style left winger that is our current extreme left wing, right? Or like the build a wall nationalist, maybe even ethno-nationalist right wing that we kind of have floating around a little bit right now, or the center. And the current center being 7 wars that are going to continue for fuck ever, big bank bailouts, big business bailouts, spending like crazy, all that kind of stuff. If you had what you would consider a normal system, which I don't think any of those three are, which one is the real extreme one of the three? And his point is that that quote,
moderates were behind the big bank bailouts. I thought most of the U.S. was behind that, outside of the big banks and big money people, basically.
Say it again.
I'm assuming you're talking about the bank bailouts post the Great Recession.
I mean, there's a number of different versions of it, but sure, that's one of them.
That's the one that comes to mind. That was the biggest bank bailouts.
Right.
When everyone was like, oh, the banks are too big to fail.
Right.
We can't let them fail.
Right. That one, I mean, you got the airline ones that I've been pitching a fit about since the beginning of the
capitalism, pandemic. You got yourself there, get yourself out of it.
I'm good with it.
I think most of America was behind it. Everyone was like, wait, what?
Right.
They got to fuck off and got their money back?
Right. And that is, but that's his point, is that you had a Donald Trump, a Bernie Sanders.
I'm saying I was
and a Joe Biden.
Going against you that it was just the moderates that were more for this. I think that was all sides of the spectrum were like, hey, what the fuck's going on?
Right, but this is his point is that this is the extreme center, because that was back in normal times, pre-Trump. Right, the big bank bailouts of the Great Recession, that was Obama era.
Well, it was like right when he came in,
2008.
I don't know if he put the legislation in or if if Bush had started the legislation to bail out the banks.
Right, but that was back when government was normal. That was pre-Trump craziness, right?
What, Obama wasn't craziness?
I'm putting it in the narrative that we're in right now.
Okay.
Right, that was back in Biden's vice president's days when the Obama-Biden administration was going to end the wars, and didn't. And then Trump didn't start a new one, thankfully, but didn't end any either. Although this whole thing about Biden taking credit for ending the Afghanistan thing.
I haven't heard anything about
Yeah, we're gonna withdraw from Afghanistan.
No, I know he's
on
withdrawing.
on September 11th, because that's awesome.
I haven't heard about him trying to take credit for it.
What do you mean?
I haven't heard him trying to brag that he's taking credit for it or anything.
He came out and said we are leaving Afghanistan September 11th, 2021.
Okay.
Well,
that I did hear.
Trump already put it in place. It was supposed to happen in June. But Biden's being praised for ending Afghanistan, which it was already supposed to end. But now he's waiting 2 months so that he can be on September 11th.
All right. That's all perspective, I guess.
Okay, just
two more months of how you want to spin it. I mean, it was anything. A business deal isn't done until it's done. So you can't take credit for something until it's done.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, Trump tried to take credit for the wall, and how much new wall did he actually build? It was something like
I think Biden's already built as much or something. Biden's already built as much since he took over, isn't he?
I haven't heard
he's built a bunch. He's been building gaps and stuff anyway.
The wall was a fucking waste of money, to my opinion.
Anyway, the point of the thought experiment is that I don't know. It kind of makes sense. The Dave Smith did a better version of what I was trying to pitch than I put up there. But essentially, what we consider the normal government is pretty fucking extreme if you think about it. Spending like it doesn't matter. War after war after war. Big bank bailouts. Big industry bailouts.
I meant war after war after war. It's been two continual wars.
Well, and then little things here and little things there. But when's the last time we haven't been at some war?
Late 90s, maybe. But even then, there were small conflicts that I think we did as far as like UN coalition forces.
Right. So 30 years-ish.
Yeah.
So, but this is the normal government.
Right after 9/11, we pretty much jumped into war. Yeah.
Right, but this is the normal government that we're used to, and But I don't know. I guess
we had a close call with Iran earlier this week.
Again,
they came within I want to say it was like 60 yards of one of our warships, and we shot some warning shots at them.
Fucking shit or get off the pot on that one. I'm tired of it. Do or do not. There's no try.
I mean, a lot of this stuff's kind of happened in the Middle East. They've had like oil tankers that were seized or surrounded by boats of, whether it was So I don't even know who all was involved in it.
We were joking earlier about nuclear, right?
Nuclear.
I mean, that's pretty clean, right? Like functionally, as far as energy production. Minus meltdowns. Take the meltdowns out, but as far as like actual production of power.
I want to say there are some now that they're able to kind of recycle/repurpose the waste, but that was always the biggest thing of, yes, it's kind of quote unquote clean if you don't think about the byproduct that then has to be stored somewhere for 200,000 years before it's quote unquote safe again.
Because I mean, I don't know.
That's the one big downside to nuclear. You've got the risk of a meltdown.
Well, that's not. I mean, that's not real anymore. Realistically,
no, it's not.
On new builds, no.
What happened in Fukushima? They had a tsunami.
When was Fukushima built?
When was it
the
built?
60s?
I have no idea when
the
it was
70s,
built.
something like that.
No idea when it was built.
Yeah, it was a pretty old plant.
I'm sure it got retrofitted a number of times.
How many nuclear submarines do we have in our arsenal?
Ask me questions I don't know.
How many times have you heard about a nuclear submarine having a meltdown? How many nuclear powered aircraft carriers do we have?
3. I don't know.
I think it's like a dozen. It's not that many. Like, it's still a lot.
I think it's a relatively new kind of concept, just because we've had aircraft carriers that have been in commission for years, and it cost us, I don't even want to know how much to build a fucking aircraft carrier.
I think it's at least $1 billion. At least.
No, I'd say more than that. I think like the fighters that
tens
go on
of-
to them are like $1 billion.
Tens of billions each. But my point is that, I mean, nuclear power plants in these submarines and in these boats and stuff like that we have all over the fucking world, they don't have problems like that.
Yeah,
the technology is well past there.
Well, there's been some push to do basically like smaller nuclear power stations, I guess, throughout the U.S.
Nuclear. You just said
nuclear.
It. Anyway, but anyway, like I don't know, like that's one of the pushbacks to be on this like whole like, you know, global warming agenda, but that's not an option. Like that's not an option. We can't. Nuclear power is not an option for the Green New Deal.
Yeah, I think that's probably more based on your byproduct that you've got to do something with.
I need to dig
like
that
a decade
further,
ago,
but I think
where Australia pretty much, because there was many countries around the world that kept sending theirs down to Australia and other countries. Those countries finally said, "Yeah, we're not taking your shit anymore."
I'll have to
if
check
you
on
got
that
your
part
power
because that's
plant,
interesting.
you need to figure out
Right.
somewhere to fucking bury it in your own goddamn land.
That's an interesting subtext to it that I need to check on, but I
I think right now the U.S. there's caves in New Mexico. I think is what we're storing them in.
Yeah.
There's a lot in Australia that are getting put there. I think they've accepted some, but I want to say their public outcry has been, you know, like we don't want, you know, 100,000 barrels of nuclear waste, you know, close to our city or whatever, or on our land.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know the facts on that part. I just don't like it. It seems to me that the technology is past, at least the meltdown portion of it, and that, you know, the efficiency is there to make a lot of power with a little bit of waste. And if we're going to compare that to carbon emissions and fracking and the damage done by, you know, like if we're going to compare the two,
Right.
I'm pretty sure even a couple thousand barrels of nuclear waste that we can store somewhere fairly safely surpasses the costs of carbon emissions and
I think the general public just kind of pushes back. You know, coal is just so plentiful that everybody's like, "Oh, it's cheap. You know, it's going to cost people less." And no lawmaker wants to, you know, tell their constituents that, "Hey, if you want power, it's going to start costing a little bit more because we want to do it cleaner."
Well,
most people aren't going to take that as like, "Oh, it's going to be cleaner."
But
like,
again, I believe
cool,
I believe that nuclear power would be cheaper anyway.
Right.
Over the lifespan of the conversation.
It has gotten safer and a little cleaner, but I think, you know, there's still some hesitancy there.
I'll have to check in on that. I need to double check it. The story I heard on it was like it's really just it's an old fear that's not accurate anymore for the function of the way it works. The way it's functionally capable of working now is nothing like, I mean, Fukushima being the most recent example or whatever, but that was like a 65-year-old plant. And yes, it's gotten worked on and done all this, that, and the other over the time, but it was still...
Well, the main reason it failed was because they had a tsunami that hit it.
Right, and they didn't have a way to turn it off.
That would have ended up being it.
Yeah, they couldn't turn, like there's no, like it broke whatever, like it broke the cooling tower or whatever, but there was no way to turn it off.
It wasn't long ago.
It just kept running and running and running and running and running until it just gave out and started leaking shit.
It wasn't long ago I read about the 3 Mile Island, just trying to figure out what ended up causing it. I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it was similar to Fukushima as far as, you know, the cooling tanks or whatever, something getting off, so they ended up having an actual meltdown.
Yeah, but a meltdown is essentially just it overheats because it's not cooling correctly.
Right.
But you can't stop it.
Exactly.
And that's the... And I think, anyway, I don't know.
It's not a fire extinguisher to put that shit out.
Right. Anyway, that's I just find that I found it interesting when I heard that, is that it's like we talk about wanting clean energy,
right,
and we have the capability of it, or at least a significant jump past what coal and oil fire and the production process of that, but that's not an okay option for some reason, and it doesn't make sense.
Right. And just the whole thing with radiation is really fucking nuts as to what it can do to a human body and what safeguards we have against it. But, you know, once it's out there, there's no really stopping radiation.
Right.
I mean, it took them, I think they worked on capping off of Chernobyl. It took them like 10, 15 years to like build the infrastructure, or the structure itself, to finally try to encapsulate it. And that happened, what, early, mid-'80s?
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. Like I said, it's an interesting little subset, and it's just one of those weird isms that, like, we're not allowed to talk about it. And, well, Randy brought it up once, but other than that, Randy brought it up once, and then I heard something about it on the radio a couple days ago.
I've seen a couple stories that if, I guess there's more talk of maybe doing smaller ones, so maybe if something did happen, it would be a smaller effect. But
I mean, yeah, like I said, I mean, my brother spent time in black cylinders in the bottom of the ocean.
Right.
And I mean, he's weird, but he was always weird. I don't think that changed his weirdness. I couldn't do it. Like, there's no fucking way you could put me in a fucking capsule in the bottom of the water, and I'd freak out.
Speaking of Fukushima, did you see the stories recently? They started pumping some of the water back into the ocean, and there was kind of pushback with the fishing industry.
I mean, the fishing industry can suck a dick, but
they were already. I think even to this day, that happened like at least 10 years ago or so, 5-10 years.
It's been a minute, yeah.
But even then, like, their fishing industry is only at like 15% of 15 to 25% of what it was before Fukushima. And then now I think they've already started doing it, pumping back, gallons and gallons of water that are essentially irradiated water.
Right.
I think somehow they're trying to pump it to where it goes more towards the sea floor. But then there's no guarantee as to where it's going.
Maybe we can get some like 15-leg crab, and it'll be a bonus.
It's possible. Did you hear about the barrels of DDT they found off of coast of California?
No.
Something like 25,000 barrels.
I saw a story about some dude found like $100,000 worth of fucking cocaine on the beach in Miami.
Oh damn!
Like,
surprise!
Like in a trash bag that floated up on the shore or whatever. It's like fucking sweet.
They're out there. I mean, there's drug runners that they see the Coast Guard come and they'll just dump that shit.
Yep.
You can't catch me if I don't have it. Ha ha.
I did hear that the non sequitur or whatever that there's some discussion of whether George Floyd ate his stash and that's part of what killed him.
I have heard a couple different sides to it.
I haven't heard much.
They actually test because there were little bits of pills that were found in the back of the patrol car that they initially had put him into. They ended up taking him out. But they tested those, and it wasn't just straight fentanyl. It was other stuff.
Right. Oh,
it wasn't exactly what they were trying to say that it was.
Yeah, I don't know. I just saw that. It doesn't. I mean, again, that's
not a story. I guess
that doesn't excuse
the facts that came out in the trial did not corroborate what the initial police reports were. They're like, hey, your initial police reports of what happened like right after this thing happened don't match up with all the things that you presented to us as part of the police investigation.
Are we surprised?
I don't know. No, but I mean, you would assume it would be.
What do you, like you're saying that like it's a profound statement? Like I should be like, holy shit, are you serious? Cops lied on the report when he killed somebody? No fucking way.
I try to have a little hope that the police reports that cops are putting in are going to be more accurate and not have that many discrepancies.
I mean, I know when I write in my journal, I am a shining star.
Yeah,
I'm the most amazing person on the planet when I'm writing in my journal.
That's not when you're writing in your journal.
Because I'm writing it.
I mean, you're writing things that go into evidence.
Okay, again.
I would think there should be a little more scrutiny versus, what you're putting in your daily journal log.
No, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you that I would hope that it is factual, but at the same time, it's a person.
All right.
And
how many other reports did they have that day? Yeah.
And how often are they going to be at all self-critical in a situation like that? Especially when they just fucking killed a guy.
Yeah, I didn't read into exactly what things didn't exactly line up. I don't know if it was, like I said, I don't know what aspects of their report didn't match up with the evidence that the state provided.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't follow the trial much at all, if I'm honest. I really,
I only watched bits and
I
pieces.
like there was some chatter on a couple of my podcasts that I listened to about what could happen if he gets acquitted of the charges, and that there's a couple of different conversations about maybe the specific the specific charge was a little bit overreach. It should have been like a murder 2 instead of a murder 1 or manslaughter or something. I don't remember what it was. I heard like the and I don't understand the legal definitions between all the different fucking murder styles.
Some people are like, this guy's gonna spend the rest of his life in jail, but most of the stories that I trust have read, it was like
20 years.
Yeah, it's like,
Which we
like no, that like they specifically said like they're not stacking these charges.
Yeah, we gotta wait. I mean,
the most he could get was like 15 to 20.
We gotta wait for sentencing, which haven't come out yet. But time served, get him out, put him back to work.
Did you hear about the cops that may have like broken the arm of a lady in Colorado? Apparently she was like semi-senile, but I don't know if they didn't know that their cameras are on, but it was like them like back at the station like talking about it, and then apparently like later on in the video they're like watching their body camera of him like arresting her, and they're kind of like laughing how they kind of manhandled this 60-year-old woman that was senile. He was like, I guess like I guess at some point she tried to resist, so they were trying to cuff her or, kind of restrain her. And he even mentioned, like, he heard like a pop. He was like, did you hear that pop? And I was like, oh no.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, I think the 3 that were in it, like I watched a little bit of it. I think CBS had like a clip of their police room footage of like them talking about like, hey, what's my body cam video? Like, oh, here it comes.
I don't know, man.
And it was more just point out these cops are like laughing about this shit.
Yeah, that part doesn't bother me as much. Honestly,
no, that part bothers me that much more.
I mean, I don't know. Like you get to like you talk to some EMTs or some firefighters and shit.
I mean, if you're talking about like some drunk guy that's saying some crazy shit, like, oh, you gotta watch this, like, listen to this like stuff this crazy drunk guy was saying, but laughing about you fucking manhandling an elderly woman that he even said is like, I'm pretty sure she's senile.
I'm not saying it's okay.
Oh, I thought you said that you would be okay with that.
I'm just saying like I could see it as one of those things where it's part of having to deal with the stress that the job is that you figure out how to make it funny even when it's not, because that's something that is not abnormal in other people that have stress.
Trying to make light of a good situation, but making light of a malicious criminal situation is totally different.
I mean, there's been some stories about like firefighters getting in trouble because there's some horrible accident on the interstate and fucking dismembered and all this kind of shit. And they're over by the truck making jokes about like, whatever, she lost her head. Ha 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 ha. And it's literally somebody that was in a car that was decapitated, but somebody else overheard it. And it's terrible, but it's like you had to walk up on the fucking scene. I'm not excusing the cops on this one because they actually did the action, which makes it worse. I agree. But I'm just saying that dark humor that is part of the job and having the stress and the gore that is part of that work. It's a natural thing that happens when you're in it. Right. I mean, there's a lot of cases where that I've heard about where firefighters and shit like that are getting in trouble for making jokes about terrible stuff, and it's like, well, you got to figure out some way to get through the day.
I get you. Yeah, there is that kind of like mental, like a defense mechanism, but
yeah, but I mean, again,
something not to dwell on.
But you're right. The fact that they did the thing makes it worse. I agree. But it's at the same time,
hey, there's this video I found of police officer in another state, and they're like, isn't this crazy? Like, ha ha ha.
Right. It was us. Well, we're high fiving each other for breaking an old lady's arm. It's fucked up. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I again, it's one of those I don't like. Part of it is that like there's this again. I go back to there's this us and them thing that is that are the two entities. There is the badge and there's the not badge, and that's a real fucking thing. And then there's
I think that kind of goes into the whole like left and right, where just like the two sides have just kind of made it worse and worse.
I mean, I right. Again, I'm not saying that there's one side is more at fault than the other. I'm saying that it's reactionary on both sides, and they're reacting to each other, and it's digging the ditch deeper, for lack of a better word. But but I think part of it though too is that you get down to it, it's like, there's a mountain of shit that is illegal that need not be. That most people are not there. There's nothing morally reprehensible about certain actions. Drug usage is one of the big ones for me. It's like, if you want to fucking shoot heroin, go shoot heroin. You're not hurting anybody. Maybe yourself. Fine, whatever. But it's illegal and you get thrown in jail and all this kind of shit. And it's like, I'm just doing me. But I got to be worried about the crime part of it all the time. There's always a crime in it. There's like, again, I need to read the book. I've heard a bunch of stories. I've heard a bunch of people talk about it. The 3 felonies a day, I think is what it's called.
Not familiar.
Basically, it's this guy that's like he's a lawyer or something like that, and he goes through it, and he's like, it's just like most states, most people functionally commit 3 felonies a day.
A day?
A day.
Damn.
Because
I'm curious to read that.
Because
when
what
he's talking about.
Right. When you go through and you dig down through all the depths of all the laws and all this different stuff, and it's like it comes down to it, like, you know, but living a normal life is illegal in this country if the police and the district attorney or whomever decide they want to do something.
Yeah.
You know, like constantly, all the time, whether it's like, you know, some sort of tax scam that's not really a scam. It's just, you know, some guy that owns a business going to the grocery store and using his tax exempt to buy some groceries for home. You know, like, yeah, it's kind of shitty, whatever, but that's a felony. You're going to go to, you know, you're going to go to jail and get thrown in a fucking cage for that. Apparently you can.
Is that a felony?
I don't know. I'd have to check on it. I'm just saying, like, shit, but I
thought you were using felony examples.
I'm throwing shit off the top of my head. I don't know what the whole list of
that's what
felonies.
I'm kind of curious to see. I'm like, man, like 3 a day, like it's got to be a lot of crazy shit that's out there that are considered felonies that are that commonplace.
Yeah, and so it's like, you know, and probably a good chunk of them are like that old shit that we talk about that just everybody just ignores
Just on the books.
But it's still on the books. Like, I mean, you know, like I don't know.
No one
like,
prosecutes it, but it's still technically.
Like, is adultery a crime? I think it's a crime still.
I don't think so.
I don't know. I'd have to check on it. Anyway, but just I don't know. Anyway, that's just like
There's
top of my head.
Is it bigamy? When you marry somebody else, I think that's considered illegal for you to legally marry somebody else. I think you can get in trouble for that. Even then, I don't think that's a felony. I'm sure that's probably a misdemeanor.
I don't know. Let me see.
To the goggles.
To the allegors. Look at that. Pops right up. 3 felonies a day by Harvey Silvergate and Alan M. Dershowitz.
Oh, it's a podcast. Is part of it, huh?
I'm sorry, it's a podcast. Each month they choose. Oh no, it's Audible. I can choose
an audiobook.
Yeah, Wall Street Journal. You commit 3 felonies a day by Gordon whatever. What a handsome fellow with his purple shirt. When we think the pace changes so quickly. Boston civil liberties lawyer Harvey Silvergate calls his new book 3 Felonies a Day, referring to the number of crimes he estimates the average American now unwittingly commits because of vague laws. New technology adds its own complexity, making innocent activity potentially criminal. Mr. Silvergate described several cases in which prosecutors didn't understand or didn't want to understand technology. The problem is compounded by a trend that has accelerated since the 80s. Blah, blah, blah. Mr. Silvergate, a liberal who wrote his previous book talking about whatever.
Yeah, why don't you read this another time?
I'm just skimming through it. Anti-cyberbullying proposal. I don't know. Anyway, that's the premise.
Something about wiretapping, but
yeah.
That'd be interesting, yeah, to kind of see the finer points of it. Like I say, there's a lot of antiquated laws where I think in some cases, I think I've heard some lawmakers say it's more trouble to really take it off if no one's enforcing it. So they just kind of consider it a moot point. Like, well, you know, nobody's doing anything against it. That was one thing I saw when there was the medical bill that was put up. That one of the pushbacks was with it being federally illegal if pharmacists tried to prescribe, or doctor or pharmacist tried to prescribe it, they would then lose their license.
Right.
I think somebody pointed out that like the DEA or someone in federal government has kind of put out some kind of statement. It's like, you know, we've not tried to rescind anyone's medical license for this.
Right, but
it's still technically illegal, but it's not being enforced to where, you know, don't be afraid of it.
Right.
But at the same time, people still have that worry, like, well, could you still come after me for it?
Right. You do something else, and they don't quite have the evidence to get you on it. But you've been prescribing pot, so we can go ahead and get you on that, even though
if they really wanted to, you know, get you for something else and pile that on top as well.
Right. Or not even, or try to get you for something else and not have what they need, but they're just pissed off, and so they pull the one out that they haven't been using because that's their excuse to do it. But again, you know, it's like I said, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it 1,000 more times. It's an us and them. It's a we have a job to do, and our job is to arrest people. It's our job.
I don't think as many people see the us and them as.
I don't know how else to describe it. If you have a better description on the way law enforcement and the public interact than an us and them, I don't know how else would you describe it? Let me correct my statement. How else would you describe the problems we're having with policing other than an us and them? How do we functionally justify the idea that, I don't know, very specifically over the last year, we've had a heinous cop killing of a civilian every month that's made national news? Like constantly, all the time, every time. It's all the time. We've had what, 5 like major cases
All right,
this last year, and then the countless ones that we haven't heard about.
That's the same thing with cyber hackers, businesses, these robocallers. I mean, nobody sees that as us and them, but yeah, there's bad actors in all aspects of life. You've got, priests that molest children for years. You've got churches that kind of set up their own kind of relegated camps and then kind of have their own little society that are breaking laws left and right. I mean, nobody sees that as us and them.
I would say that these little cults, as you described, would be an us or them. Probably most of them see it that way.
I don't think the general public sees it as an us and them.
Oh, fuck yeah. A cult is a them for sure.
Right, but they're not
they're against regular society.
I guess that wasn't really a good example because I'm trying to think of a more broad, America-wide type thing. I mean, you have medical malpractice all the time.
But, okay,
but it's not us against the doctors.
But what other universally?
I mean, there's that joke that lawyers. What's a good lawyer? He's at the bottom of the ocean or whatever that stupid joke is.
What other universal institution is there in countrywide? What other institution is everywhere as police departments are?
Firefighters.
Okay.
Trash collectors.
I don't know. That's not
doctors.
That's not really an institution. Doctors are not in the same field, but I get it. Doctors work.
Institution. Well, you're gonna call cops an institution.
What else would you call them?
Public service.
Okay.
What do you think their job is?
Again?
What is their job?
To arrest people.
Oh, okay. That's all they do.
Okay, I mean, the sheriff's office gives food to old people that can afford it sometimes.
That was some interesting stories. I like how she brought that up.
I mean, it's a cool little subsystem in there, but it doesn't change the relationship issues.
Oh, I thought that was outside of what they normally do. I thought she was bringing up a specific instance, the woman you spoke with from the sheriff's department.
Yeah, she's it's a program that they have within there that's available as the situation needs it.
Gotcha.
Which is a cool thing. I'm not mad at it.
A lot of officers started carrying like stuffed animals in their trunk for if they go to like a domestic abuse type thing, to where the parents are fighting and the children's going to have to go to children's services, or even just trying to calm the kid down. They've got like a teddy bear in the back to just at least try to like break the ice and
get
calm the kid down a little bit.
I'm not mad at that, but I don't know. I don't hate cops. I just don't. I don't trust the motives, I guess, is the problem I have.
I think you're just perpetuating the us and them. I mean, most of the times I've gotten pulled over, nothing's ever had. I've had, bad cops that I've had interactions with, but for the most part, I've never had a cop, try to hit me or anything like that. I had one ask me if I wanted to go to jail for doing 10 miles per hour over the speed limit, and the 16-year-old self didn't have enough to push back and be like, you can't take me to jail for doing 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. I think it was more just trying to, instill a little bit of fear in me to not speed. Because he didn't give a shit about the carton of cigarettes I had in my car that I was technically illegal to have with me.
That's illegal to buy, not to possess.
Yeah, pretty sure you still get in trouble for possessing something can't legally buy.
Oh, we just need to have a lawyer.
He wouldn't care if I had a beer. He wouldn't care if I had beer with me.
I mean, you're not using the beer at the time, so it's not a DUI.
Like, well, you're not 21, so obviously you didn't buy it, but you have it on you.
I mean, I don't know. There's a burden of proof that you had intent to use it.
Oh, somebody threw this out on the side of the road. I was just picking up litter, and the next time I stopped at the rest area, I was going to throw it away in the trash can.
I mean, you were 16. Was it your dad's car?
No, it was my car.
Did he know that? Was it registered to you or you registered to your dad?
It was registered to me.
Still, I mean, my dad borrowed my car.
I was out of state.
I mean, I don't know. There's a mountain of there's a mountain of question in that one. But
I guess.
I'm picking. I'm sorry. I don't know.
But no, I know some people, see cops as that. They see lawyers as that. Some people see doctors as that. That doctors are only out there to, get their money, and they see you for 5 minutes. And it pisses a lot of people off when you go see the doctor. And like,
I mean, I think the all right, to agree with myself a little bit. I think there is an issue with the system in hospitals. Obviously, we've made reference to it on here a number of times. I mean, there's an issue to the system that the doctors are a part of that is not in the best interest of the client.
I think some people can kind of misconstrue them, like, oh, it's the doctors jacking up the bill.
Right, I'm not going to put the blame on the doctor or the nurses or anybody in specific, but there is a problem with that system where the point of it is being superseded by the system and the requirements for the system to do what it does.
Yeah, and I think some of it goes back to, we talked about, the kind of customer service issues of, somebody's more likely to put a bad review on a company if they've had a bad experience versus a good experience. They're not as inclined in that good experience situation to go in and put a good review. But if they have a bad review, I'd say probably like fourfold the amount or 4 times the likelihood to go in there.
And especially in the new digital age where there's like a social currency and dropping the fucking this place sucks.
Well, then you can buy companies that can fucking bury those bad things and pay somebody enough to give you 10,000 thumbs up on whatever site.
But there's also the value in that there's also that part of the people that go like, well, if I bitch about it, I can get some free shit.
But I think it's, with the law enforcement, we see these bad stories that come out just because we don't see as many good stories that come out, all the good they do, because we don't realize how many crimes they've stopped or how many crimes they've prevented, just because they don't advertise like, hey, we prevented a bank robbery last night or whatever.
I don't know.
Bank robbery they may talk about.
I follow a few people that post like surrounding counties, mostly not here, but surrounding counties where they'll take a picture like their fucking meth and a bunch of cash that they took off of somebody when they pulled them over.
Yeah, you can definitely see those too.
It's like, okay.
I mean, you look on like the 24-hour arrest thing or
my
whatever.
favorite was
people got arrested last night. They're not bragging about each person they arrested last night. They're like, hey, we got this guy for DUI. We got this person for solicitation. We got this guy for jaywalking.
Yeah, I mean, anyway.
But I think it's more we focus. It's another one of those situations in society where we're focusing a lot on the bad, so we think that one bad thing we're seeing all the time.
I'll agree with you and especially the way the media covers and stuff like that, we see more of the shit stories.
Most cops are like, we're not bad people. Like these are, just a handful of bad apples. It's not the entire police department.
You were still signing up to do some immoral shit. That's part of being a cop. You're throwing people in jail for stupid shit.
I don't think anybody fucking goes to the police academy to do immoral shit.
Okay. So when you have no issue with the idea that you don't think pot is a problem.
I would say 99.9% of those officers are doing it to try to benefit society. Either they had a wonderful encounter with a cop that, when they were growing up that, made them want to become a cop.
Okay.
And that's why they're there.
I didn't say that they signed up to do immoral shit, but they signed up knowing that there's immoral shit that is part of the job. Easy example for most states remaining that you're throwing people in a box for possessing marijuana. You have
it's legally it's what they have to do as part of their job.
Right.
They don't get to pick and choose what laws to enforce. They have a little bit of latitude.
So you sign up for a job knowing you're going to do shit that you have
a cop getting pulled over for simple possession. They've just taken that little $5 piece of weed and just been like, man, get out of here. I'm taking this, and, throw it on the ground, digging in the dirt with their shoes, or like
right. And but if their superior found out about it, they're taking a gamble on their career doing those kind of things.
True.
Right. But they signed up for the job.
It's not the job, but you're framing in the aspect of marijuana, which is pretty accepted throughout the U.S. I mean, what other immoral things do you think they signed up to do, to knowing and willingly do?
I mean, what's the majority of incarceration right now?
I have no idea. I haven't looked at incarceration rates.
I'm pretty sure most of it is
probably are drug crimes. Yes,
is drug crimes. And
but a lot of those are drug crimes in conjunction with other crimes where they were caught with heroin and
they had a gun on them that they didn't have registered properly or something of that nature, or they were trying to sell something that they owned to another individual that wanted that thing for the money that they had.
Right, or got caught shoplifting, and then they found the illegal weapon on them and contraband.
Right, because I don't know. I give up. I'm done.
I may look at some statistics. I don't know. I'm open to it, but I don't.
There's I don't know. It goes back to the 3 felonies thing. There's too much shit that's illegal, and if you're signing up to be a cop, you're going to go and arrest people for shit that doesn't need to be illegal, and you know that when you take the job.
There's a good Madison quote that I was reading that if all men were angels, we wouldn't need government. There's more to it. I can't remember. There was a little bit better part to it, that if all politicians were angels, we wouldn't need blah blah blah. But
yeah, maybe you might need to get the full quote on that one, because I feel like there's more to it. Because
I'm going to look it up. It was pretty good. I may have actually.
If all you said Madison.
Yeah. I told you I've been trying to read some of the Federalist Papers. It's pretty interesting. Apparently, Hamilton wrote most of them. I think maybe 60% or so, 40 to 60%.
All right. Madison quotes, "If men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external or internal controls on government would be necessary." So, right. If framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the pop-up to fuck off. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and the next place oblige it to control itself.
Yeah, see, I like that. And that's one thing I think that we don't have, is enough kind of self-regulation amongst ourselves. I mean, I think it's ABC that does that, what would you do? Or they'll put a play in, of people arguing in the middle of a restaurant, and just trying to see, they've got that hidden camera to see if people around them, some wife, just berating the shit out of her husband. I don't want to make it sound sexist and assume that a man's just always berating the wife.
Yet
with somebody around it,
yes,
right. But in kind of that instance of how much do we collectively try to kind of govern ourselves as well, and be like, hey, that's not right, or how many people just kind of turn their head down, I don't want anything to do with that,
right?
Those kind of kind of going, or I don't want to go back to gun control, but in that aspect, how much do we expect, a legal carrying person to really put themselves in the middle of a situation they have nothing to do with?
I mean, the same amount that we expect a non-carrying person to put themselves in a situation?
Right. I guess.
I don't know. I mean, I guess the concern is that they're going to insert themselves into a situation to make it worse. Having a gun than not having a gun, inserting themselves in the situation either way.
I mean, like I said, the NRA's standpoint, or for their slogan for years, is only thing to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
That's why
it's just kind of that thing of hey, if we have more people out there carrying, we'll stop all these crimes. It's well, that's holding within that reliance that these bystanders that may be carrying are then going to step up into it.
Yeah, but it's still it's a false equivalency in that if carrying people don't care, that's the same as non-carrying people not caring. Nothing changes. But if one person that carrying does care, that stops one thing, and so that's a net positive.
Okay, so would you say that the likelihood of stopping that is equal?
No, depending on the situation, if a person who cares that it doesn't have the inability to do anything because they don't have a weapon on themselves in the situation, then they can't do anything. Where
They can't.
I mean, they are less likely to have an effective outcome on.
Why?
I don't know. You give me a fucking situation to put them in.
I mean, I sent you that FBI statistic. More often, it was stopped by people that were not carrying. Granted, some of those were in school situations where obviously the principal's not going to be carrying a gun around high school.
I don't know. So, like, we're at a bank robbery and some guy comes in with a gun trying to rob a bank, and some guy in line pulls out his gun and stops the guy.
Pretty sure there's a sign on the door that says you can't bring guns into banks, just like you can't wear sunglasses.
Then they carry. Well,
which I was kind of wondering when the whole mask thing came around. They allowed the masks. They stopped like ball caps because I guess the cameras are kind of pointed down at an angle a little bit,
right?
To where you weren't allowed to like wear hats or sunglasses if you were doing a transaction. But anyway, yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example where a situation that could use a gun, a person who I'm trying to think of. There's a situation happening and I'm watching it, and my ability to interject.
Most logic as most people will turn. We have a small fraction of people that are altruistic.
I agree with you, but I'm just saying
and that will put themselves before anybody else.
But I'm just saying the theory being that if I have no if I don't have what I feel is the correct means to interject in a situation, I'm less likely to interject, even if I am the type that wants to. If I have the want and ability to interject, maybe the ability is not the right word. If I have the want to interject in a situation, and it could be a violent situation, and I have a weapon, I'm more likely to interject in that situation than if I don't. Because I don't have what I would feel comfortable of having the means to interject positively in the situation if I didn't have a weapon with me. So I'm agreeing with you that you're right. The most people probably don't interject with or without a weapon on them. But in a situation, and again, I don't know that I'm not going to say that I'm the person that would interject anyway. But if I'm in a situation where an interjection could be useful and a weapon could make it very useful, but I can't have a weapon because I'm in the bank and they won't let me, and I actually follow the rules, then I'm less likely to interject, even though I would want to normally. So the statement makes sense. I don't know that I agree with it 100%, but the statement makes sense. Because again, like, so if somebody walked in the room right now and held a gun to your head and somehow or didn't notice that I was here and I had my gun with me, I'm more likely to interject on your behalf with a gun than without. I would probably, for you, interject either way.
So the gun's the only thing that's giving you bravery.
It's not bravery. It's what am I supposed to do? What is my function? What is my capability of functionally doing anything in this situation? I can try to talk, sure. And maybe I can try to talk him into pointing the gun at me and shooting me instead, and maybe not shooting you as a result. And that's a win. Fine. But if underneath the table here I have my 9mm and he walks in and holds the gun to you and he's focused and looking at you, and I reach under the table and grab mine and put him down before he gets to pull the trigger on your head, that's a win.
It's that situation that I've talked about. Once somebody already has a gun out and they're literally a split second away from just being able to pull the trigger, you do not have enough time in which to get to your weapon, draw it, and shoot at the same time. You're already a second behind.
Sure. And if there's only three people in the room, then you're factually correct. But if I'm pulling out,
then he's shot me and you as you're trying to go for something because you've startled him.
Possibly.
So the gun's already on me.
Possibly. I mean
that seems more likely. He's already got his out and drawn, finger on the trigger.
Right.
He's only got to turn 2 or 3 feet.
Right, but it's possible.
You still got to reach yours, draw up on him.
You're correct.
Okay. Well, okay. Just glad I'm not wrong in my logic of thinking. Like I said, I've watched interviews of FBI and trainers that teach law enforcement and FBI and people that are going to breach rooms and SWAT teams of what they do in those situations.
But I mean, again, I don't know. It's it would be. There goes from a 0% chance of me stopping you from getting shot to a small % chance of me stopping you from getting shot because I have my weapon on me.
Possibly.
Where
the thing I read was increasing the time, basically. Like I said, you were talking about maybe trying to talk to him for a second.
Right.
If you can increase time, your odds of surviving through it are dramatically increasing.
Right.
Or even give me that time
sure.
to like talk to him while he's not noticing, like you said, maybe you're able to get your hand on something without him noticing.
Right. I mean, I got the bonus of the dog here. He's a killer.
Yep.
He'll just distract. I mean, he won't do anything like killer. He'll just be distracted enough that I'd have time to get. I could run upstairs into my safe, come back down and sit back down by the time some home invader gets into my house and gets through the dog. Because you'll have to shoot my dog if you're trying to break into my house. Not because he's going to eat you. He's just going to get so excited to see you. Say, hey, hi, you're my best friend, right? You're my best friend, right? You're going to have to shoot your new best friend if you're going to get in my house.
I can't remember if I talked about it before, but I think I may have misquoted. So it was a 2008 Supreme Court, and it was I can't remember what kind of officer it said he was. He was some kind of federal officer. I think he was an officer for like a federal court in D.C., but it ended up being one of the last major Second Amendment rights cases that went to the Supreme Court. And it had to do, he was a resident of D.C. I think in that time you were outlawed in carrying a handgun. I think they had basically a handgun ban unless you had a special permit, but I think even that permit only allowed you to basically have it inside your house. And you had to apply to like the chief of police, and it was like a yearly thing, a yearly permit that you had to have renewed. And I think even then the district had, I think some states still have it to where if you have a firearm in your home, you have to have it as some kind of like safety, like either like a trigger lock or something like that. Which that guy appealed and ended up only going up to the Supreme Court to allow him to be able to, I guess, have a weapon in his home.
Under his pillow without a trigger guard.
I don't know if it ended up taking away the trigger lock, but it was one of the last major cases that Scalia, or not one of them, it was one of the things he's known for writing the majority opinion.
Gotcha.
When they did strike it down, when they did find it unconstitutional, that it did go against the Second Amendment of him being able to protect himself. That's where Scalia actually was pointedly said, and I think a lot of people kind of glossed over a little bit, that he did say, the Second Amendment, much like the First Amendment, is not an unlimited right. It doesn't give you, the right to carry a gun anywhere and everywhere for any reason. That there are limits to the Second Amendment, just as there are limits to freedom of speech.
Okay. I mean, okay. I don't know.
I was trying to read through. It's like 140-something pages. It's ridiculous watching like court, like the majority opinions of like Supreme Court cases. Like, yeah. I don't know where the fuck these people have time to write this shit. Mm-hmm. Because they sit there and quote like so many other like previous cases and books and scholars that have written on certain things. Yeah, they'll go back and reference this and that, and I'm just like, Jesus.
A good lawyer is a researcher. That's all they are.
Right. Yeah.
And they're just a good researcher, and they have good...
Like when blah, blah, blah versus blah, blah, blah.
Right. They have good investigators.
The judge said this. And that's where judges have, some kind of latitude.
Right, because probably 9 times out of 10 judges be like, I got to look that up.
Well, it's their interpretation on either a precedent or a law.
Yeah. It's a shit show. That's what it is. I mean, it really is, because it's not. I mean, we are not equal under law for that for that fact alone. Is that it is interpretable, which means that if you have the skills or time or money to hire an attorney, two people in exactly the same situation can have different outcomes legally.
Oh yeah,
that's not how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be it's the same regardless.
Tell us about the study they did where people got more severe cases. Like right before lunchtime, basically.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, because we talked about that, because it's like a lot of people, like if you ever have a major surgery, you always do it in the morning.
Yeah.
Because
they're that much more focused.
I think the stats are there's less complications from surgery or whatever after the fact if you have an afternoon one or whatever, or something like that. All right, people. It's late. I got to go to bed. I got to go camping tomorrow. I'm going to do it backwards. Fanatic Brewing, everybody.
Yeah.
fanaticbrewing.com/agreement. Check them out for Thursday, Friday, Saturday in the fan base.
I recommend the red.
The red. I like the pale ale personally. I haven't had their new IPA yet. That's on my list of things to do. The Radler's fun too if you like the Radlers at all. But anyway, the fan base on Thursdays is open mic comedy. If you're funny, or funnier than me at least, you can go down there and make some good jokes. Friday and Saturday, they have a $5 Black Angus burger or Black Bean burger, as well as a $3 pint special. That is the tap room at Fanatic Brewing. Go to fanaticbrewing.com/agreement and learn more from them there. We really appreciate them for sponsoring the show. It just makes me pleased that we're moving in that kind of direction as far as the show goes. We, on the other hand, are Almost in Agreement, almostinagreement.com, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Interact with us there. We're fun. I don't know if we're fun or not, but it's fun to do. You can dog us on there. You can tell us about things that we miss or tell us how wrong I am on as many things as you want, and I'll prove myself probably wronger the more I try. But we're Almost in Agreement. We appreciate y'all for listening. Have a great night.